Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi, and welcome to the ISO Show. Today's guest is Yousif Rajah, who's the Group Head of Information Security at dotdigital. And I'm really delighted that Yousif has joined us today because he first found out about how to implement ISO 27001 via the ISO Show. So he was searching for information on ISO 27001, stumbled across the ISO Show, and I'm delighted to say that he successfully implemented an information security management system and successfully achieved certification to ISO 27001. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Yousif. Hi, Yousif.
Hello, good morning.
Great. Thanks very much for joining us today. Would you mind just sharing with us a bit about what dotdigital does, please?
Yeah, sure. So in essence, dotdigital is a tech company. So more specifically, we build software service solutions which are used by our customers to engage with their clients. So be that over email, SMS, or social channels. Essentially, what they would do is they log into our platforms, they would build and manage their campaigns and manage their contacts for all of their kind of customer engagement, the programs that they're running.
Cool. So that's like a digital marketing platform service then that you provide?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's not solely used for marketing. It's just kind of any kind of a customer engagement program. So we also have sort of chat channels. So, for example, if you're looking at a website and you have the sort of little chat window pop up, we provide those sort of services as well so that you can talk in real time with your customers.
Oh, fantastic. So before we begin and dive into 27001 and your journey in achieving certification, could you just tell me something that not many people know about you?
Sure. So I play guitar and have been in a few bands over the years. When I was ever so slightly younger, me and the band were convinced we were going to be the next Oasis. Needless to say, that didn't happen. But honestly, we had so much fun along the way. Got 4 kids now, so I barely get a chance to pick up a guitar ever.
Oh, well, hopefully you can kind of share that with them, hopefully when they get a bit older, when they're ready to kind of pick up that guitar and you can have some kind of playing sessions with them.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean,
on your own little band.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's the plan. They start showing a little bit of interest. They like banging things, banging drums. So I'm not quite ready to hand over my guitar just yet.
Okay. So let's look at your journey then. So looking at the very beginning of the journey, obviously you heard about, steps to success in terms of achieving certification to 27001 on this podcast, on the ISO Show. But kind of before then, what kind of piqued your interest in terms of looking at that standard? What was the main driver behind implementing an ISO standard like ISO 27001?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 aspects to it. So from a business perspective, there have been talk about achieving 27001 for quite a few years, probably even before I arrived. And I was brought in, I think must be about 5 years ago now, to start the security program or to build a more formalized security program. And the reason 27001 was on the minds of the business then was because almost every RFP or client questionnaire that we receive will ask if we're certified. So clearly there was a demand and a desire for it from our interested parties. And also from my point of view, or from more of an operational perspective, we knew that we had built a good security program over the years, but we wanted that external validation and also like confirmation that we have met an internationally recognized standard.
Yeah, I think that, obviously the organisation takes it very seriously, hence, your role there. And a lot of organisations do have InfoSec systems in place, but I think it's that kind of the formalisation of pulling everything together, isn't it? And making everybody working together in line with that system can be great help. And obviously getting the badge is great recognition for that achievement as well. I was just wondering, how long did it actually take you from beginning to end? from, when you started the journey through to actually going through the assessment?
Yeah, so the first thing we did was with the help of Blackmores, we did our gap analysis. We did that in late October 2019. I think we then had a day here or there just before Christmas to start sort of talking about the implementation. We then got really motoring in the new year with our stage 1 audits being in March and stage 2 in May. So I'd say all in all, 5 to 6 months from starting the implementation through to auditing.
That is brilliant. Obviously I know about the project in some respects because I know that there was great momentum, I think, for actually achieving certification within a given time frame. Just for the benefit of our listeners, so that they can get an idea of the scale, in terms of the scope of certification, because it's not just for one location in the UK, is it? It covers a number of offices.
Yeah, that's right. So the scope of the certificate is actually our global solution. So the platforms that we have built and offer around the world, but in terms of physical premises, we've decided just for now to stick to our UK offices, and there's 4 of those. I think we potentially look at covering our international offices over time, but there's quite a few of those. So obviously that has time and cost implications as well. But for now, the scope is our global solutions and our UK offices.
I mean, that is pretty awesome to achieve that in just 5 to 6 months. I think that's fantastic. And I think also that kind of helps to demonstrate to others that are thinking about implementing ISO 27001 that you don't have to take years. I think once you set your mind to it, you set that target, you've got a project plan in place and you go for it, and you've got, the resources and the dedication that you can achieve it within just a few months. So I think that, going from kind of 0 through to assessment within that period of time for that scope is brilliant. So well done.
Yeah, thank you. The only thing I'd add to that is that I think we find with hindsight that we were probably more prepared than we thought going into it. So it sounds daunting or it feels daunting, but if you have a program in place already, the chances are you're quite a long way down the road already. Just going through that process will then help pull those other bits together.
Great. Yeah, I think that's quite reassuring for a lot of businesses out there that are thinking, it almost seems like something completely alien to them going for an ISO standard, but I think you've clearly demonstrated that actually you've got quite a lot of it in place already. And it's just a case of kind of dotting the I's and crossing the T's and bringing it all together in alignment with the standard. So just talking about that then, with the gap analysis, so where would you say was the biggest gap when you did the gap analysis, if you could share that with us at all?
Yeah, I think there was a fair bit of mandatory documentation that we didn't have in place. So all the standards will have a list of documents that you must have and maintain. There were some that we just didn't have in place at all, or there were others that we did have but didn't quite meet the requirement of the standard. So there was a lot of documentation that we had to put right before we went into the audit. But I say if I was to kind of pick one area, possibly our risk assessment and risk treatment processes weren't perhaps up to scratch. So that's probably where we had to focus quite a lot of time.
Yeah, and I think there is a lot of focus on that within the standard, and rightly so. And I think that's quite common with a lot of businesses. There might not necessarily be a procedure for risk assessment and risk treatment within information security. That's probably more common in health and safety, but it's not treated that seriously, I don't think, in InfoSec, which is obviously why this standard is kind of held in such high regard, because it is so thorough from a risk management perspective. And obviously, you wouldn't be going for the standard unless it was to raise that standard. So I think that's quite common actually to hear. So in terms of bridging those gaps, what kind of difference did that make, do you think, within your organisation?
So the work we put in place implementing the standard, especially in risk assessment and risk treatment, has definitely helped our own processes. It's not to say we weren't doing it before. We had risk committees, we had risk assessment processes, but what we've been able to do in implementing 27001 and going through the process is just really improve those and just make them a lot more efficient. And I think we're definitely feeling the benefit of that now.
Great, okay. And could you share an example of that with us, Yousif?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned the risk committee before. So there might be a separate kind of risk register that was being maintained there. I might have had one for strictly cyber security things. As a PLC company, we have to publish risks in our annual report as well. Where when we put in the kind of documents that we put in for 27001, we quickly realized that actually we could just use that document for all of these use cases by just kind of filtering or setting sort of cut-off criteria in terms of risk scores. We were able to kind of just use that one document for all of those purposes, and that's just made things so much more efficient.
Okay, great. So it's helped to kind of simplify that and make life easier internally in managing the risk management. That's really great.
Yeah, and for its main purpose is to kind of make a repeatable process for risk management, and that's exactly what it's done. Rather than having different groups of people maybe scoring things differently or working in different ways, it's just made that kind of across the board the same, which is obviously the goal.
Yeah, I guess, based on the size of dotdigital now, and, you have gone through this growth phase recently, and obviously, hopefully that will long continue. That basically means then you've got that model for scalability, not just for growth, but for risk management as well, haven't you, as you venture out into different countries and services and that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess when you mentioned earlier about kind of rolling this out more globally, I guess that just makes it so much easier for you now, rather than creating different risk assessments and documents for different countries or locations.
Yeah, that's it. We've got the framework in place. It's just putting the inputs into that for each location, but it's all there ready to go. Our ISMS does cover our global business. It's just at the moment we chose not to get certified for the international offices. But in theory, as we sort of go through and pick off those offices, we kind of have to ensure that we're including the specific details of those in all of our documentation, like business continuity, for example.
Yes, yeah. I think, in some cases, an organisation might think, okay, well, we need to get all of our global sites certified at once, but actually that can be a mammoth task, and you've done it in exactly, a really sensible way in starting off. That's something that's manageable, that's then scalable. It's a great credit to you on that. And what would you say you've learned from this experience then over that 6-month period of implementing ISO 27001?
I'd say, going back to what I was saying before, that if there is a program in place already, so in our case, it was information security, then the chances are that you're already doing a lot of the things you need to do to meet the standard. However, implementing the standard will help you tie a lot of those bits and pieces together, work more efficiently, and actually drive improvement a lot faster.
I mean, I was going to ask you about the benefits, but I think you've pretty much answered that in terms of, improving efficiency and that sort of thing, and just systemizing what you do so it can be easily communicated. So they're kind of like the benefits of having a robust information security system in place. But what about achieving certification? I know it's very early days, but what would you say would be the main benefits, to dotdigital for achieving certification now?
Yeah, so it is still early days. I think we've had the certificate for just under 2 months. But from a high-level business perspective, as simple as being able to tick that box in the RFP saying that we are ISO 27001 certified, and understanding the kind of RFP process, that could be a deal breaker if we didn't have it. So I'm yet to hear whether having it has made the deal for us or not, but I'm sure going forward, there are going to be occasions where having 27001 certification has helped the business win business. From a more operational point of view, me knowing that we're doing things to a standard, and actually that we're starting to see efficiencies from that standard brings, has been awesome.
Great. So that's kind of your main ROI as it stands, from an operational point of view, which is, I think that's good enough really, isn't it? I think, but in terms of, the completion of the RFPs and RFQs, how much time would you typically spend on doing that sort of thing if you didn't have ISO 27001 in place?
Yeah, so it is quite a burden on the team actually. And to be honest, we haven't yet seen being certified making any of those sort of go away. I'm not sure whether we will, to be perfectly honest, because I think while having the standard will help, a lot of the time our customers have their own kind of frameworks and security questionnaires that they still want answering. So I'm not sure whether going to give us that much back in terms of time.
Yeah, it's still too early then to tell.
Yeah, it's still too early to tell. Fingers crossed it does help. I'm almost certain it will help us win business. It just may not save us any time on those questionnaires that we have to answer.
Okay. And if you could give any tips to somebody who's just contemplating implementing 27001 and embarking on this journey, what kind of tips would you give to them?
I'd say get management buy-in early and get that commitment communicated to the business early as well. Just like any strategic project that you may embark on, it will run so much better if everybody understands the direction of the company. And obviously, if you have somebody at the top communicating what that strategy is, then it's just going to make everything you do in the implementation so much easier.
Brilliant. Okay, lovely. Thank you. Finally, before you go, I'd just like to ask a quick question. If you could gift a book to somebody, what would it be and why?
So I have a book on my desk next to me now, and it's by an author called Charles Arthur, and it's called Cyber Wars. And it's about the hacks that shook the business world. So it's a bit more of a deeper dive into some of those bigger hacks that we've seen in the news, like Sony Pictures and TalkTalk.
Oh, interesting. Cyber Wars by Charles Arthur, was it?
Charles Arthur, yeah.
Oh, Charles Arthur. Excellent. And also, do you have a favourite quote that you'd like to leave listeners with?
Yeah, it's from somebody called Bruce Schneier, and it's, if you think technology can solve your security problems, then you don't understand the problems and you don't understand technology. And what I take from that is that there's no silver bullet that can address all your security issues. There's no shiny blinky box that you can install in your data center that will defend all cyber threats. It's about understanding, technology and people and how they interact with each other and what you need to do as a whole in that kind of layered approach to kind of protect yourself.
Oh, fantastic. Great advice. Great quote there. And yeah, wonderful interpretation. And that kind of links quite well with obviously the whole kind of information security systems that you've been implementing at dotdigital. But it's always a journey of continual improvement, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. So how can our listeners get in touch to find out a bit more about dotdigital?
We're at dotdigital.com/contact-us for our contact details.
Cool. We'll have details of that in our show notes if anybody's listening to this on the road or doing something where they're not at their desk or with a pen and paper handy. So that's great. Thanks very much then, Yousif. It's been great to interview you today, and I really appreciate you taking time out to share your journey and also those tips for success as well. And I'm absolutely thrilled to bits, that you first heard about, how to go about implementing 27001 on the ISO show. Thanks very much for joining us today.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you to you and the rest of the Blackmore team for helping us along the journey. It's been quite fun, actually.
Oh, brilliant. If our listeners would like further information on how to implement ISO 27001, our ISO 27001 podcast masterclass is the place to go to, which is episodes 13 to 15. Also, if you'd like a free 30-minute 27001 consultation, please do get in touch with us via the ISO show notes at www.blackmoresuk.com. Thanks once again for joining Yousif and I today, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.